I arrived at my beach house with rental agents and discovered my son-in-law vacationing with his mistress, supposedly on a work trip. He sneered, "Tell my wife if you want. She's too scared to leave me." I nodded slowly and made one call, not to my daughter, but to someone who would destroy him. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. But let me back up and tell you how I got to that moment, standing in my own doorway, watching my daughter's world crumble before she even knew it. The October sun was warm on my face as I pulled into the driveway of my Myrtle Beach house. Two rental agents chattering excitedly in the back seat about staging and market potential. I'd been dreading this moment for weeks, but Frank's medical bills had drained our savings, and even 3 years after his passing, I was still drowning in debt. "Mrs. Walsh, this property is absolutely stunning," gushed Jennifer, the younger agent, her stilettos clicking on the wooden deck. "Oceanfront, 3 bedrooms, that gorgeous wraparound porch. We'll have no trouble finding buyers." I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking slightly. This house held 40 years of memories. Frank proposed to me on this very deck. Katie took her first steps in the living room. But memories don't pay bills, and at 64, I needed to be practical. "The master bedroom has that incredible view," I said, pushing open the front door. "Frank always said he wanted to wake up to the ocean every—" I stopped mid-sentence. There were voices coming from upstairs, male and female talking softly. My blood ran cold. "Is someone supposed to be here?" asked Robert, the senior agent, checking his phone. I shook my head, motioning for them to stay back. The voices were clearer now, coming from my bedroom. A man's deep laugh, followed by a woman's giggle. My heart hammered against my ribs as I crept up the stairs, the old floorboards betraying my presence with soft creaks. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see movement on my bed, my grandmother's quilt tangled around 2 figures. The man's back was turned to me, but I knew those broad shoulders, that perfectly styled dark hair. Michael Crawford, my son-in-law. The woman beneath him definitely wasn't my daughter Katie. This woman was blonde, younger, with perfectly manicured nails that were currently running through Michael's hair. "When do you have to be back?" the woman asked, her voice breathy. "Not until Sunday night," Michael replied, pressing kisses along her neck. "I told Katie I had that investors' conference in Atlanta. She never questions my business trips." My vision blurred with rage. Katie was home in Charleston, probably making Michael's favorite dinner for when he returned, while he was here desecrating my marriage bed with his mistress. "Michael Crawford," I said loudly, pushing the door open. The scene that followed would have been comedic if it weren't so devastating. Michael jerked upright, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and panic in rapid succession. The blonde woman, barely older than Katie, scrambled to cover herself with my quilt. "Mrs. Walsh," Michael stammered, grabbing a pillow to cover himself. "I can explain." "Can you?" I crossed my arms, amazed at how calm my voice sounded. "Explain to me why you're in my house, in my bed, with someone who isn't my daughter?" The woman was frantically gathering her clothes. "I should go," she whispered. "Stay right there, Sandra," I said sharply. Her startled expression confirmed what I already suspected. I knew exactly who she was. Sandra Mitchell, the 28-year-old marketing coordinator from Michael's firm. Katie had mentioned her before, how Michael always praised her work. Michael's shock was wearing off, replaced by something uglier. "Look, what Katie doesn't know won't hurt her. This doesn't change anything, doesn't it?" I stepped closer. "My daughter loves you. She defends every late night, every business trip, every time you make her feel small." "Katie's fine," he snapped, pulling on his pants. "She has everything she wants. House, car, that ridiculous shopping habit. She's not exactly suffering." The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach turn. "She wants your love, Michael, your respect, your faithfulness." He laughed, actually laughed. "Faithfulness? Come on, Mrs. Walsh. Katie's gotten comfortable. She stopped trying years ago. Look at Sandra here." He gestured to the trembling young woman. "She appreciates what she has." "Get out," I said quietly. "Now wait a minute," Michael said, his tone shifting to that condescending voice he used when he thought he had the upper hand. "Let's be reasonable. You need to sell this place, right? I heard Katie talking about your financial situation. Maybe we can work something out." The audacity was breathtaking. Work something out? I could help with the listing, maybe find a buyer through my contacts. For the right price, of course. All you need to do is forget what you saw here. I stared at him for a long moment. This man who had systematically isolated my daughter from her friends, her family, her own sense of worth, who made her believe she was lucky to have him. Or, Michael continued, his voice taking on an edge, you can tell Katie what you saw. Go ahead. She's too scared to leave me anyway. She knows she'll never find anyone else willing to put up with her issues. That's when something snapped inside me. Not broke, snapped into place, like a puzzle piece finally finding its home. You're right, I said calmly. I should tell Katie. Michael's relief was visible. Good. I knew you'd be reasonable. I pulled out my phone, but instead of calling Katie, I scrolled to a different number. One I hadn't used in over 2 years. Wait, Michael said, unease creeping into his voice. Who are you calling? I smiled as the call connected. Hello, Tony. It's Maggie Walsh. Remember how you said to call if I ever needed anything? I paused, watching Michael's face drain of color. Well, I think it's time we had that conversation about Michael Crawford. Michael's arrogance evaporated like morning mist. Who the hell is Tony? I continued my phone conversation, never breaking eye contact with my son-in-law. Yes, the same Michael Crawford we discussed before. It seems my suspicions were correct. I paused, listening. Wonderful. I'll send you the photos in an hour. Photos? Sandra squeaked from behind the bed. I held up my phone, showing them the pictures I'd snapped while they were too distracted to notice. Amazing what these smartphones can capture these days. Michael lunged toward me, but I stepped back into the hallway. I wouldn't if I were you. Tony doesn't like it when people threaten his friends. You're bluffing, Michael said, but his voice shook. You don't know anyone named Tony. The truth was, I knew Detective Tony Russo quite well. He'd been Frank's partner on the Charleston police force for 15 years before Frank retired to become a private investigator. Tony had stayed in touch after Frank's death, checking on me occasionally, offering help whenever I needed it. What Michael didn't know was that Tony had been investigating financial irregularities at Prestige Investments, Michael's firm, for the past 6 months. He'd even asked me if I'd noticed any unusual behavior from Michael, any sudden wealth or expensive purchases that didn't match his salary. I'd told Tony I hadn't noticed anything, but that was before I found out about the beach house visits, the designer clothes Michael bought Katie on sale, the luxury car he claimed was a company bonus. Pack your things, I told them both. You have 10 minutes before I call the police for trespassing. This is ridiculous, Michael blustered, but he was already grabbing his clothes. Katie will hear about this. She'll never forgive you for destroying her marriage. Her marriage was already destroyed, Michael. She just didn't know it yet. Sandra had dressed quickly and was edging toward the door. I blocked her path. Not so fast. Sandra, you and I need to chat. I don't have anything to say to you, she whispered. Oh, but you do. See, I know this isn't your first time here. Mrs. Henderson next door has excellent eyesight and a passion for bird watching. She's been keeping track of all the interesting wildlife she's spotted from her deck. Sandra's face went white. You don't understand. Michael said he was separated, that he was just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized. Did he now? I glanced at Michael, who was struggling with his shirt buttons. Tell me, Sandra, what else has Michael told you? That his wife was unstable, that she had emotional problems and couldn't handle a divorce right now. Sandra's voice was barely audible. He said he was protecting her. The lies were so ridiculous I almost felt sorry for the girl. Almost. Sandra, honey, my daughter is a pediatric nurse who volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends. The only thing she can't handle is a husband who lies to her face every day. Michael finished dressing and stormed toward me. You're going to regret this, Maggie. Katie depends on me. Without me, she's nothing. We'll see about that. He pushed past me, Sandra trailing behind like a lost puppy. I followed them downstairs, where the 2 rental agents stood frozen by the front door, clearly having heard every word. I am so sorry, Jennifer stammered. We had no idea. It's not your fault, I assured them. Let's reschedule for next week. I have some family business to handle first. After they left, I sat on my deck watching Michael and Sandra load their weekend bags into his BMW. The same BMW he'd told Katie was a company car, available only during business hours. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony. "Got your message. Very interesting timing. Can you meet tomorrow? We have a lot to discuss." I typed back, "Absolutely. And Tony, I think I have more evidence than we originally thought." As Michael's car disappeared down the coastal highway, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: purpose. For too long, I'd watched my daughter shrink under Michael's manipulations, had seen her light dim a little more each year. Katie used to be fearless. She'd backpacked through Europe alone, stood up to bullies in school, defended stray animals with the fierce protectiveness of a mother bear. Somewhere along the way, Michael had convinced her that her strengths were weaknesses, that her independence was selfishness. But I remembered the real Katie, and tomorrow I was going to start fighting to get her back. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Katie's number, then hesitated. She deserved to know the truth, but she also deserved to have all the facts. If Tony's investigation had uncovered what I suspected, Michael's betrayal went far deeper than just adultery. Instead, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. "Dorothy? It's Maggie. I wonder if you might have some time to chat about those bird-watching notes you've been keeping?" The conversation that followed confirmed what I already knew. Michael and Sandra had been using my beach house as their private retreat for almost 6 months. Every business trip, every client dinner, every late night at the office. My daughter wasn't just married to a cheater. She was married to a man who was stealing from his own company, using her mother's house as a love nest, and systematically destroying her self-worth. But unlike Michael, I didn't underestimate my daughter. Katie was stronger than he knew. She just needed to remember that strength, and I was going to make sure she did. The next morning, I met Tony Russo at a small cafe near the Charleston courthouse. At 58, Tony still looked like the cop he'd been for 30 years. Alert gray eyes, weathered hands, and an easy smile that made people want to confess their secrets. "Maggie," he stood to hug me. "You look good. How are you holding up?" "Better now," I said, settling into the booth across from him. "Tell me about this investigation." Tony glanced around the cafe, then leaned forward. "Prestige Investments has been under surveillance for 8 months. We have evidence of a sophisticated embezzlement scheme involving multiple employees." My coffee cup trembled in my hands. "And Michael? He's not just involved." "Maggie, we think he's running it." The words hit me like a physical blow. Running it? The scheme works by creating false client accounts, making legitimate investments, then skimming the profits before they're reported. The clients never know because their statements show the expected returns. I thought about Katie's new car, their renovated kitchen, the expensive clothes Michael bought her. How much money are we talking about? Close to $2 million over 3 years. My stomach dropped. $2 million? The beauty of the scheme is that it looks legitimate on the surface. Michael has been very careful, but he got greedy. Started living too lavishly. New car, expensive vacations, that renovation on their house. "Katie thinks he got promoted," I whispered. "He did get promoted, but his salary doesn't come close to covering their lifestyle." Tony pulled out a manila folder. "These are financial records we've been able to trace. Credit card statements, bank transfers, property purchases." I flipped through the documents, recognizing locations and dates. The weekend in Napa, $8,000. Katie's diamond necklace, $15,000. The company bonus that paid for their kitchen renovation, $45,000. All of it stolen. "Tony, Katie doesn't know any of this." "We figured as much. Your daughter has a spotless record, and her financial activity shows someone who lives within her means. The expensive purchases all trace back to Michael's accounts. What happens when you arrest him?" Tony's expression grew grim. "That's where it gets complicated. We need more evidence to make the charges stick. Michael has been careful to cover his tracks, and we suspect he's preparing to disappear." "Disappear?" "New identity, offshore accounts. We've seen it before. These white-collar criminals often have exit strategies." I thought about Sandra, about Michael's casual cruelty toward Katie. "And he'd leave my daughter holding the bag?" "Probably. Her name is on some of the property purchases, joint bank accounts. Even if she's innocent, she could face charges." The rage that had been simmering since yesterday erupted into white-hot fury. Michael wasn't just betraying Katie emotionally. He was setting her up to take the fall for his crimes. "What do you need from me?" "Access to Michael. We need him to make a mistake, get careless. Right now, he's being too cautious. I smiled, remembering the arrogance in Michael's voice yesterday. I think I can help with that. Maggie, this isn't a game. If Michael suspects you're working with us, he won't. Trust me, Tony, I know exactly which buttons to push. That afternoon, I drove to Katie's house, my heart breaking as I pulled into their perfectly manicured driveway. The house looked like a magazine cover, all clean lines and expensive landscaping that screamed success, success built on lies and stolen money. Katie answered the door in scrubs, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired, older than her 32 years. Mom, what a surprise. Come in, come in. She hugged me, and I caught a whiff of that familiar scent, the lavender lotion she'd used since college. I was in the neighborhood, I lied smoothly. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I'm good. Tired. Work has been crazy, and Michael's been traveling so much lately. She led me into their living room, gesturing to the new furniture. Do you like the sofa? Michael surprised me with it last week. The sofa probably cost more than Katie made in 2 months. It's beautiful, honey. Business must be going well. Oh yes, incredibly well. Michael keeps getting these amazing bonuses. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a stranger, this successful, important businessman. Katie's laugh had a hollow quality. Remember when we used to worry about rent money? I remembered. I also remembered the vibrant, confident woman who used to laugh without reservation. Katie, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever miss your old life, before all this success? Katie's smile faltered. What do you mean? You used to paint. You had that studio apartment with terrible lighting. But you'd stay up until 3 a.m. working on canvases. That was a long time ago, Mom. You were happy. I'm happy now. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Are you? The question hung in the air between us. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Katie, the one who never backed down from difficult conversations. Michael says artistic pursuits are selfish when you're building a life together, she said finally. He's right. I need to focus on our future. What about your future, Katie? What do you want? I want what we have. Security, stability, a nice home. Her voice sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced these words in the mirror. And what does Michael want? Katie's expression shifted, became guarded. Why are you asking me this? Because I love you, and I see how you've changed. People change, Mom. They grow up. They realize that dreaming about being an artist doesn't pay the bills. Since when do you care about money? Since I realized how hard life can be without it. Katie stood up abruptly. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot. I followed her into the kitchen, noting the high-end appliances, the granite countertops, the wine fridge that probably cost more than my car. Katie, if something happened, if everything fell apart, would you be okay? She froze, coffee pot in hand. What do you mean? I mean, are you prepared to take care of yourself? Do you have your own savings, your own plans? Mom, you're scaring me. Is something wrong? Are you sick? I'm fine, sweetheart. I just worry about you depending on someone else so completely. Katie set down the coffee pot and turned to face me. Michael takes care of me. He makes sure I have everything I need. But what do you need, Katie? Really need? For a moment, her carefully constructed composure cracked. I saw confusion, fear, and something else, a deep, aching loneliness. I need to not worry about money, she whispered. I need to feel safe. I need to know that someone wants to be with me. Oh, honey. I reached for her, but she stepped back. Don't. Please don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you pity me. I don't pity you. I'm proud of you. You're smart, talented, compassionate. You could do anything. Be anything. I am something. I'm Michael's wife. The words felt like a slap. This confident, independent woman had been reduced to an appendage, a reflection of someone else's success. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony. We may have to move faster than expected. Can you meet tonight? I looked at my daughter, so fragile despite all the expensive trappings surrounding her. Whatever was coming, it was going to destroy the life she thought she had. But maybe, if I was careful, it could also give her back the life she'd lost. That evening, I met Tony at the police station. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face as he spread files across his desk. We intercepted communications between Michael and an offshore banking contact, he said without preamble. He's planning to transfer the remaining funds and disappear within the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks? My heart raced. What about Katie? That's what we need to discuss. Michael has been setting up your daughter as the fall guy for months. Joint accounts, forged signatures, property purchases in her name. Tony showed me documents that made my blood run cold. Katie's signature on investment papers she'd never seen. Her name on bank accounts she didn't know existed. Credit cards opened in her name to fund Michael's lifestyle. She could go to prison, I whispered. Not if we build a case showing she was manipulated. But we need evidence of coercion, proof that Michael deliberately deceived her. I can get that evidence. Maggie, no, it's too dangerous. If Michael suspects, he won't suspect. You said it yourself. He's arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Tony leaned back in his chair. What are you thinking? Michael believes Katie is completely under his control. He's also convinced that I'm a harmless old woman who can be bought or intimidated. I smiled grimly. He's wrong on both counts. Explain. Tomorrow is Katie's birthday. I'm going to throw her a party. A party? A surprise party. I'll invite all her old friends, the ones Michael has systematically isolated her from. I'll also invite some of Michael's colleagues from work. Tony frowned. To what end? People talk at parties, especially when they've had a few drinks. Michael will feel pressured to maintain his image as the successful husband. He'll brag, make boasts, maybe let something slip. That's a lot of maybes. There's more. I'm going to tell Michael that I've been having financial troubles, that I need to sell the beach house quickly. I'll ask for his help finding a buyer. And Michael can't resist an opportunity to exploit someone. He'll try to manipulate the sale, probably offer to buy it himself at below market value. When he does, he'll have to explain where he's getting the money. Tony considered this. It could work. But you'd be wearing a wire. Fine. And if he gets suspicious, you call it off immediately. Understood. We spent the next hour going over details, setting up contingencies. As I drove home, my phone rang. Katie's name appeared on the screen. Hi, sweetheart. Mom, Michael told me something weird happened at the beach house yesterday. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Oh? He said you were there with some real estate agents and you seemed upset about something. He was worried about you. The audacity was breathtaking. I was just feeling emotional about selling the house. You know how attached I am to that place. That's what Michael thought. He offered to help you find a buyer through his business contacts. Did he? He feels terrible that you're struggling financially. We both do. I could picture Michael coaching her on this conversation, feeding her lines designed to make me feel guilty and dependent. That's very thoughtful of you both. Actually, that's why I'm calling. Michael suggested we take you out for dinner tomorrow night, to talk about the house sale and just spend time together. Tomorrow is your birthday. Katie. Oh, right. I forgot. The fact that she'd forgotten her own birthday told me everything I needed to know about her mental state. Well, then we should definitely celebrate. Why don't you both come to my house instead? I'll cook. Are you sure? Michael has been so busy lately. I insist. It's been too long since we had a proper family dinner. After we hung up, I sat in my driveway for a long moment. Tomorrow night, I would begin the process of destroying my daughter's marriage and probably her sense of reality. But I would also begin the process of saving her life. The next afternoon, I spent hours preparing Katie's favorite meal, pot roast with vegetables, homemade rolls, and the chocolate cake I'd made for every one of her birthdays since she was 5. At 6 o'clock, they arrived. Katie looked beautiful in a blue dress I'd never seen before, another one of Michael's expensive gifts. Michael wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Mom, this smells incredible, Katie said, hugging me. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. It's no trouble, it's your birthday. Michael surveyed my modest dining room with barely concealed condescension. Nice place, Maggie. Very cozy. Thank you. It's not much, but it's home. During dinner, I watched Michael perform his role as the devoted husband. He complimented Katie's appearance, asked about her work, made jokes that weren't quite funny. Katie responded with practiced smiles and grateful looks. It was like watching a play where both actors had forgotten they were performing. So, Maggie, Michael said as I served cake, Katie mentioned you're having some financial difficulties. I wouldn't say difficulties, more like adjustments. Frank's medical bills, you know. Of course, that must be stressful. It is. especially since I need to sell the beach house quickly. I was hoping to get market value, but the agents say it could take months. Michael's eyes sharpened with interest. What do you consider market value? Well, the comparable properties are selling for around $400,000, but I'd take $350,000 for a quick sale. That's a significant loss. I don't have much choice. The mortgage payments are becoming difficult to manage. Michael exchanged a look with Katie. You know, I might be able to help. I have contacts in real estate investment, people who buy properties quickly for cash. That sounds wonderful. What kind of timeline are we talking about? I could make some calls this week. These investors typically move fast when they see the right opportunity. And what would they consider the right opportunity? Michael leaned forward, his businessman persona fully activated. Properties that can be acquired below market value and flipped quickly. Your beach house would be perfect for that kind of investment. How much below market value? Well, for a cash sale with quick closing, they'd probably offer around $250,000. Katie looked surprised. Michael, that seems low. Mom, wouldn't that be a huge loss? Sometimes you have to cut your losses, honey, Michael said smoothly. The market is uncertain right now. A bird in the hand, you know. I nodded thoughtfully. You're probably right. $250,000 would solve my immediate problems. I could connect you with the right people, Michael continued. For a small finder's fee, of course, maybe 5% of the sale price. There it was. Michael couldn't resist trying to profit from my desperation. That seems very reasonable, I said. When could we move forward? I'll make some calls tomorrow. These investors prefer to move quickly, so you'd need to be prepared to close within a week or two. That fast? Cash buyers don't need mortgage approvals or inspections. They buy properties as is. Katie frowned. Mom, are you sure about this? Maybe you should get a second opinion. Your mother knows what's best for her situation, Michael said firmly. Sometimes older people need to make practical decisions rather than emotional ones. The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench, but I maintained my grateful smile. You're so helpful. Michael, I don't know what I'd do without you. As they prepared to leave, Michael pulled me aside. Maggie, I want you to know that Katie and I consider you family. We'll always be here to help you navigate these kinds of decisions. I appreciate that more than you know. He squeezed my shoulder in a gesture that probably looked affectionate to Katie, but felt like a threat to me. Family takes care of family, he said. Don't forget that. After they left, I called Tony. How did it go? He took the bait. He's going to try to buy my house for $250,000 through fake investors, then flip it for full market value. Did you get it recorded? I touched the small device hidden in my sweater. Every word. Good. That gives us fraud, but we need more. We need to catch him in the act of transferring the stolen money. Don't worry, I said, looking at the birthday cake Katie had barely touched. I'm just getting started. Tomorrow, phase 2 would begin. The next morning, I called Michael's office and asked to speak with him privately. Mrs. Walsh, his voice was smooth as silk. How can I help you? I've been thinking about our conversation last night, about the house sale. Of course. I've already reached out to some contacts, very promising responses. That's wonderful, but I was wondering, could we meet today? I have some questions about the process, and I'd prefer to discuss them in person. Absolutely. Why don't you come to my office around 2 p.m.? Prestige Investments occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown Charleston building. The lobby screamed success. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and abstract art that probably cost more than most people's cars. Michael met me at the elevator, all smiles and charm. Maggie, welcome to my little corner of the financial world. His office was exactly what I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, and photographs of Michael with various wealthy-looking people. A shrine to his own supposed importance. Please sit. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Can I get you coffee? Water? Coffee would be lovely. As Michael buzzed his assistant, I noted the expensive watch on his wrist, the custom-tailored suit, the Italian leather shoes, all purchased with stolen money. So, he said, settling behind his desk, what questions can I answer about the house sale? Well, I was wondering about the timeline. You mentioned these investors move quickly? Very quickly. In fact, I heard back from one of them this morning. He's very interested. That's exciting. What did he say? Michael pulled out a file folder. Props for his performance. He's prepared to offer $240,000 for a cash purchase, closing within 10 days. $240,000. Yesterday you mentioned $250,000. These investors are negotiators, Maggie. They start low and work their way up. But $240,000 is still an excellent offer for a quick sale. I pretended to consider this. And your finder's fee? Given the quick turnaround and the service I'm providing, I think 8% would be appropriate. So Michael was planning to steal $19,200 from me while helping his fake investor steal $160,000. The greed was staggering. That seems fair, I said. But I have to ask, this investor, he has the cash available immediately? Absolutely. These high net worth individuals keep substantial liquid assets for exactly these kinds of opportunities. High net worth individuals? What kind of business is he in? Michael hesitated for just a moment. Import-export, very successful operation. I see. And you've worked with him before? Several times. Very reliable, very discreet. I nodded thoughtfully. Michael, can I be honest with you about something? Of course. I'm scared. Selling Frank's house, making these kinds of financial decisions alone, it's overwhelming. I feel like I'm in over my head. Michael's expression softened into what he probably thought was sympathetic concern. That's completely understandable, Maggie. These are big decisions. The thing is, I've been thinking about what you said last night, about family taking care of family. Yes? I was wondering if you might consider handling more of my financial affairs. Nothing major, just helping me make sense of my investments, my retirement accounts. Michael's eyes lit up with predatory interest. I'd be happy to help. What kind of assets are we talking about? Well, there's Frank's pension, some savings accounts, a small stock portfolio, maybe $300,000 total. That's a substantial amount. Definitely worth managing properly. The problem is, it's all scattered across different institutions. I've been thinking I should consolidate everything, make it easier to manage. That's excellent thinking. I could help you move everything into more efficient investment vehicles. You mean like the ones you manage here at Prestige? Exactly. We specialize in maximizing returns for our clients. I leaned forward conspiratorially. To be honest, Michael, I've been worried about leaving Katie financially secure if something happens to me. With the house sale and the proper investment of my other assets, I could potentially leave her quite a substantial inheritance. How substantial? Well, if we sell the house for $240,000 and properly invest my other assets, maybe $600,000 or $700,000 total. Michael was practically salivating. In his mind, he was already figuring out how to steal from me twice, once on the house sale, and again by embezzling from my investment accounts. That would certainly provide Katie with security, he said carefully. The thing is, I'd want you to be the executor of my estate, someone I trust to make sure Katie is taken care of. I'd be honored. And of course, as executor, you'd receive a fee for your services. What would be appropriate for managing that size estate? Well, executor fees are typically 2 to 3% of the total estate value. So Michael was now planning to steal money from my inheritance too. The man had no limits. That seems very reasonable. Should we start the paperwork? Absolutely. I can have my assistant draw up some preliminary documents this afternoon. I stood up to leave, then paused, as if remembering something. Oh, Michael? There is one other thing. Yes? I've been having some issues with my current financial advisor. He keeps asking uncomfortable questions about my spending patterns, wanting to verify purchases I've made. It's quite intrusive. Michael's demeanor shifted slightly. What kind of questions? Oh, about the home improvements I've made, some of the gifts I've given to family members. He seems to think I'm spending more than my income supports. Some advisors are overly cautious. He even suggested I might need to provide receipts for major purchases to verify their legitimate expenses. Michael went very still. Receipts? Can you imagine? As if I need to justify how I spend my own money. That does seem excessive. I told him I don't keep receipts for family gifts. When I give Katie money for things she needs, it's between family members. None of his business. Absolutely. Family financial arrangements are private matters. I gathered my purse and stood. Well, I should let you get back to work. When can we move forward with the house sale? I'll contact the investor today. We could probably have contracts drawn up by tomorrow. Wonderful. And Michael? Thank you for being so helpful. Katie is lucky to have such a caring husband. Katie is my priority. Maggie, everything I do is for her. As I rode the elevator down, I reflected on the layers of Michael's deception. He wasn't just stealing money. He was positioning himself to steal from me, my daughter, and eventually my estate. But what he didn't know was that Detective Tony Russo was listening to every word through the wire I was wearing. And by tomorrow, we'd have enough evidence to put Michael away for a very long time. The only question remaining was how to protect Katie when Michael's world came crashing down. And I was pretty sure I had a plan for that too. That evening, I drove to Katie's house unannounced. I found her in the garden, pulling weeds with an intensity that suggested she was working through some serious emotions. "Mom?" She sat back on her heels, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to talk to you, away from Michael." Katie's expression became guarded. "Why away from Michael?" "Because I think you and I need to have an honest conversation. One we probably should have had months ago." She pulled off her gardening gloves and stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "Come inside. I'll make tea." In the kitchen, I watched my daughter move with mechanical precision, filling the kettle, arranging cups, retrieving sugar and cream. Everything perfect, everything controlled. "Katie, when was the last time you painted?" "Mom, we've been through this. Humor me. When?" She paused, teacup halfway to her lips. "I don't know. Maybe 2 years ago? What happened to all your supplies? Your easel, your paints? They're in the garage. Michael needed the spare room for his home office. And you were okay with that?" "Of course. His work is more important than my hobby." "Since when is your art a hobby?" Katie set down her cup with more force than necessary. "Since I realized that being a dreamy artist doesn't pay the bills or provide security. You make good money as a nurse. I make decent money. Michael makes real money. And that's more important than your happiness? My happiness depends on feeling secure. Mom, on knowing I'm taken care of." I studied my daughter's face, noting the tight lines around her eyes, the way she held her shoulders as if bracing for impact. "Katie, do you remember what you used to say about money when you were in college?" "That was different. I was young and naive. You used to say that money was just a tool, that the goal was to have enough to do what you loved, not to accumulate wealth for its own sake. People change their priorities, or people get convinced to change their priorities." Katie's jaw tightened. "If you're implying that Michael somehow brainwashed me, I'm saying that the Katie I raised wouldn't sacrifice her dreams for anyone. I didn't sacrifice anything. I made mature choices. Did you? Or did someone make you believe that your dreams were selfish and impractical?" We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear Michael's car pulling into the driveway. "Katie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay? Are you happy?" "Really, truly happy?" Katie's composure cracked slightly. "What kind of question is that?" "The kind that requires an honest answer." "I'm content. I have a good life." "That's not what I asked." Michael's key turned in the front door. "I asked if you're happy." "Happiness is overrated," Katie said quickly. "Security matters more." Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, his smile faltering when he saw me. "Maggie, another surprise visit." "I was just leaving," I said, standing. "Katie and I were catching up." "How nice. I hope you weren't discussing anything too serious." "Just family things," Katie said, avoiding my eyes. Michael moved to stand behind Katie's chair, his hands resting on her shoulders in what looked like an affectionate gesture, but felt more like a claim of ownership. "Family is everything," he said, his grip tightening slightly. "Isn't that right, Katie?" "Of course." I gathered my purse and kissed Katie's cheek. "Think about what we discussed, sweetheart." "I will." As I drove home, I thought about the way Katie had flinched when Michael touched her shoulders, the relief in her voice when I said I was leaving. My daughter was living in a beautiful prison, and she'd been convinced that the bars were for her protection. Tomorrow those bars would come crashing down. The question was whether Katie would see it as liberation or destruction. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Tony's name appeared on the screen. "How did the office meeting go?" "Perfectly. He's planning to defraud me in at least 3 different ways. And tonight? Katie is more fragile than I thought. When this comes out, she's going to need serious support." We've arranged for a victim advocate to be present during the arrest, someone specifically trained in financial abuse cases. Good. Tony, there's something else. I think Michael has been psychologically manipulating Katie for years, isolating her, undermining her confidence, making her financially dependent. That fits the profile. These white-collar criminals often use emotional manipulation to control their victims. She's going to blame herself when she finds out about the stolen money. The advocate will help with that. Maggie, are you ready for tomorrow? Tomorrow, Michael would bring me contracts for the house sale. He'd try to rush me through the signing, eager to set his final theft in motion. Instead, he'd find himself under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. I'm ready, I said. The question is whether Katie will ever forgive me for destroying her world. You're not destroying her world. Maggie, you're saving her from a lie. As I hung up the phone, I looked at the photo on my mantel, Katie at her college graduation, paint-stained and radiant, holding up a canvas she'd completed the night before. She'd painted a sunrise over the ocean, all golden light and infinite possibility. Tomorrow, I was going to help my daughter find her way back to that light, even if she hated me for it. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel possible. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one Frank always said made me look distinguished, and positioned the recording device Tony had given me. At exactly 10 a.m., Michael knocked on my door, briefcase in hand, and that practiced smile plastered across his face. Maggie, you look wonderful this morning. Thank you, Michael. Come in, come in. He settled into my living room like he owned the place, spreading contracts across my coffee table with theatrical efficiency. I have excellent news, he announced. My investor friend was so impressed with the property photos that he's prepared to move forward immediately. I leaned forward with what I hoped looked like eager anticipation. How immediately? We could close tomorrow if you're ready to sign today. Tomorrow? That seems awfully fast. Cash buyers don't mess around, Maggie. When they want something, they move quickly. Michael pulled out an official-looking document. This is the purchase agreement. $240,000 cash, as is condition, no inspections, no contingencies. I pretended to study the contract while noting the details Tony would want to hear. The buyer was listed as Coastal Properties LLC, undoubtedly a shell company Michael had created for this purpose. And your fee? 8% as discussed, $19,200. I picked up my pen, then hesitated. Michael, I have to ask, this buyer, he's legitimate? I'm not going to have any legal problems? Absolutely legitimate. I've done business with him many times. And the money? It's legal money? Michael's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Maggie, what kind of question is that? I'm sorry. It's just that Frank always warned me about deals that seem too good to be true. This isn't too good to be true. It's a fair market transaction. I nodded and signed the first page, then paused at the second. What's this about a cashier's check being held in escrow? Standard procedure. The money gets deposited with a neutral third party until closing. And who is this third party? Prestige Investments has an escrow account for exactly these kinds of transactions. Of course they did. Michael was planning to route the stolen money through his own company's accounts to make it look legitimate. That's convenient, I said, signing the second page. We aim to make things easy for our clients. As I reached for the final page, my doorbell rang. Michael frowned. Are you expecting someone? I don't think so. I went to the window and felt my heart skip. Tony Russo was standing on my porch, along with two other men in suits. Oh my, that's Detective Russo, Frank's old partner. Michael went rigid. Detective? He stops by occasionally to check on me. Frank asked him to keep an eye out. I opened the door with a bright smile. Tony, what a lovely surprise. Good morning? Maggie, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all. Come in, come in. Michael Crawford is here, Katie's husband. We're just finishing up some paperwork. Tony stepped into the living room, his eyes taking in the contracts spread across the coffee table. Mr. Crawford, we meet at last. Michael had gone pale. Have we met? Not formally, but I've heard a lot about you. Really? From whom? Tony smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Multiple sources, actually. Mr. Crawford, I'm going to need you to step outside with me. I'm sorry? You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit grand theft. The color drained completely from Michael's face. "This is ridiculous. You have no idea what you're talking about. We have recorded conversations, financial records, and testimony from multiple witnesses." Tony nodded to his colleagues, who moved to flank Michael. "You have the right to remain silent." As Tony read Michael his rights, I watched my son-in-law's carefully constructed world crumble. The arrogance melted away, replaced by panic and desperate calculation. "This is a mistake," Michael kept repeating. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Tell it to the judge," Tony said, cuffing him. "Mrs. Walsh, we'll need you to come to the station later to give a formal statement." "Of course." As they led Michael away, he turned back to me with a look of pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done. Katie will never forgive you for this." "We'll see about that," I said calmly. After they left, I sat in my quiet living room, staring at the unsigned contracts. In a few hours, Katie would learn that her husband was a criminal and that her mother had been instrumental in his arrest. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. Katie answered on the second ring. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Sweetheart, I need you to come over, right away." "What's wrong? You sound strange." "I'll explain when you get here. Can you leave work?" Yes, I suppose." "Mom, you're scaring me." "I know. Just come, please." 20 minutes later, Katie rushed through my front door, still wearing her scrubs from the hospital. "What's the emergency? Are you hurt? Sick?" "Sit down, Katie." "Oh God, you are sick. What is it? Cancer? Your heart?" "I'm fine, physically, but we need to talk about Michael." Katie's expression shifted from worry to defensiveness. "What about Michael? He was arrested this morning." The words hung in the air like smoke. Katie stared at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Arrested? For what?" "Embezzlement. He's been stealing from his company for years." "That's impossible." Katie's voice was barely a whisper. "Michael would never. He's successful. He earns good money. The money he's been spending. The lifestyle you've been living. It was all stolen, Katie." "No." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "No, that can't be right. There's been a mistake." I pulled out the documents Tony had shown me, bank records, financial statements, evidence of Michael's crimes. "It's all here, sweetheart. $2 million stolen over 3 years. Katie's knees buckled. I caught her arm and guided her back to the chair. $2 million? Her voice cracked. "But that means the house, the car, my jewelry, all purchased with stolen money." "Oh, God." Katie buried her face in her hands. "I'm going to prison." "No, you're not. The police know you were an unwitting victim." "Victim?" Katie's head snapped up. "I'm his wife. I live in that house. I drive that car. I wear the jewelry he bought me. How can I be a victim?" "Because you didn't know where the money came from." "But I should have known. I should have asked questions, demanded explanations." I knelt beside her chair. "Katie, Michael is a master manipulator. He spent years convincing you that you were lucky to have him, that you couldn't survive without him. Maybe I am lucky. Maybe I can't survive without him." The defeated tone in her voice broke my heart. "Sweetheart, you're one of the strongest people I know. You just forgot that about yourself. Strong people don't get fooled for years. Strong people don't live off stolen money without realizing it. Smart people get fooled by experts, Katie. And Michael is an expert." We sat in silence while Katie processed the magnitude of what had happened. Finally, she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "How did you know? How did you find out?" That was the question I'd been dreading. "I caught him with another woman." "What?" "At the beach house, yesterday morning. He was there with his secretary, Sandra." Katie's remaining composure shattered completely. She doubled over as if she'd been punched, sobbing with the kind of raw pain that comes from the deepest betrayal. "How long?" she gasped between sobs. "I don't know. Several months at least." "So while I was making his favorite dinners and ironing his shirts and believing every lie he told me about working late, he was sleeping with someone else?" "Yes. In your house. In your bed." "Yes." Katie's sobs turned to rage. "That bastard, that lying, stealing, cheating bastard. There's more, Katie." She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "More? He was setting you up to take the blame for the thefts. Your name is on documents you never signed, bank accounts you didn't know existed. He was going to let me go to prison. He was going to disappear and leave you holding the bag. The rage in Katie's eyes intensified. How do you know all this? Detective Russo, Dad's old partner, has been investigating Michael's company for months. When I told him what I saw at the beach house, we worked together to gather evidence. You've been investigating my husband? I've been trying to protect you. Katie stood up again, this time with purpose rather than panic. Where is he now? In jail, I assume. He'll probably make bail, but his assets are frozen. Good. I hope he rots in there. I was relieved to hear anger in her voice rather than despair. Anger meant she was fighting back. Katie, there's something else we need to discuss. The house, the car, your bank accounts, they're all going to be seized as evidence. I figured. Where am I supposed to live? Here, with me, for as long as you need. Katie laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. So, I'm back where I started, 32 years old and moving in with my mother. You're starting over, sweetheart. There's a difference. Is there? Because right now it feels like my entire adult life has been a lie. Not all of it. Your work at the hospital, your friends, your art, those were real. My art. Katie wiped her eyes. Michael convinced me it was a waste of time. Michael convinced you of a lot of things that weren't true. For the first time since I'd broken the news, Katie looked thoughtful rather than devastated. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you just tell me about the affair? Why go through all this elaborate investigation? Because if I'd told you about Sandra, you would have blamed yourself. You would have tried to fix the marriage, gone to counseling, worked harder to be the wife Michael wanted. You're probably right. But this way, you know the truth. Michael isn't just unfaithful. He's a criminal who was willing to destroy your life to save his own. Katie nodded slowly. So there's nothing to fix, nothing to save, nothing worth saving. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders in a gesture that reminded me of the fearless young woman she used to be. Okay, what do we do now? 3 days later, I found Katie in my garage, surrounded by dusty canvases and art supplies she'd retrieved from her house before the FBI sealed it as evidence. Finding anything interesting? I asked, setting down a cup of coffee beside her. I forgot I painted this, she said, holding up a small canvas. It was a portrait of Michael, painted early in their marriage when she still saw him through rose-colored glasses. What are you going to do with it? Katie considered for a moment, then picked up a tube of black paint. Something therapeutic. I watched as she squeezed paint directly onto Michael's painted face, then used a palette knife to smear it across the canvas until his features were completely obliterated. Better? Much. She wiped her hands on an old towel. I've been thinking about what you said, about starting over. And? I want to file for divorce immediately. I want my maiden name back. And I want to testify against Michael in court. Are you sure about the testimony? It'll be difficult. Mom, he stole $2 million and was going to let me take the blame. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of man he is. The steel in her voice reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this daughter of mine in the first place. There's something else, Katie continued. I've been looking at apartments, but everything decent requires first month, last month, and security deposit. I don't have that kind of money. What about your savings? Frozen along with everything else. The FBI says it could take months to sort out which money is legitimately mine and which came from the thefts. You can stay here as long as you need. I appreciate that. But I need my independence back. I've been dependent on someone else for too long. I understood that feeling completely. What if I co-signed a lease for you, just until your finances are sorted out? I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Katie hugged me, and for the first time in years, it felt like hugging my real daughter instead of the diminished version Michael had created. There's one more thing, I said. Tony called this morning. Michael's attorney is trying to negotiate a plea deal. What kind of deal? Reduced sentence in exchange for returning the stolen money and providing information about other employees who might be involved. And the prosecutor wants to know if you'd be willing to make a victim impact statement. Katie's jaw tightened. What would I say? The truth. About how his crimes affected you. What it's like to discover your entire life was built on lies. Would it help put him away for longer? Probably. Then yes. Absolutely yes. That afternoon, we drove to downtown Charleston to meet with the prosecutor. Katie had dressed carefully in a simple blue suit that made her look professional and credible. Assistant District Attorney Sarah Morgan was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who radiated competence. "Mrs. Crawford, thank you for coming in. I know this is difficult." "It's Ms. Thompson now," Katie corrected. "I've filed to have my maiden name restored." "Of course. Ms. Thompson, can you walk me through your husband's behavior over the past few years? Specifically, any attempts to control your finances or limit your independence?" Katie took a deep breath and began to speak. She told Sarah about the gradual isolation from friends, the way Michael had convinced her to quit activities she enjoyed, his insistence on managing all their financial affairs. "He told me I was bad with money," Katie said, "that I was too trusting, too naive to handle important decisions." "Did you believe him?" "Eventually, yes. He was so confident, so successful. I started to think he was right about me." "What about your career? Did he support your work as a nurse?" "He tolerated it. But he often made comments about how I should focus on our home instead of other people's problems." As Katie spoke, I watched her posture change. She sat straighter, her voice grew stronger, and the defeated woman who'd sat in my living room 3 days ago was replaced by someone who was fighting back. "Ms. Thompson," Sarah said finally, "if you're willing to testify at trial, your testimony could be crucial in securing a conviction. I'm willing. It won't be easy. The defense will try to portray you as someone who knew about the thefts and chose to ignore them. Let them try. I have nothing to hide." After we left the prosecutor's office, Katie and I walked along the Charleston waterfront. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know I was strong enough to handle all this?" I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because you're my daughter, and because I remember who you were before Michael convinced you to be someone smaller. I don't feel strong. I feel angry and humiliated and scared. Anger can be strength if you channel it properly. And being scared just means you're smart enough to understand the stakes." Katie nodded, looking out over the harbor where sailboats bobbed in the gentle waves. "I want to start painting again," she said suddenly. "That's wonderful. Real painting, not just therapy sessions in the garage. I want to take classes, maybe even try to sell some work." "What would you paint?" Katie smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. "Freedom. I want to paint what freedom looks like." The trial began on a crisp Monday morning in November. I sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching Katie take the witness stand with quiet dignity. She'd chosen to wear a simple gray dress that made her look both vulnerable and strong. Michael sat at the defense table, looking nothing like the confident businessman who'd tried to swindle me out of my house. 3 weeks in jail had stripped away his polish, revealing the small, desperate man underneath. "State your name for the record," the prosecutor requested. "Catherine Thompson." "Ms. Thompson, you were married to the defendant for 7 years?" "Yes." "During that time, were you aware that your husband was embezzling funds from his employer?" "No. I had no knowledge of any illegal activity." The defense attorney, a sharp-dressed man who specialized in white-collar crime, stood for cross-examination. I held my breath, knowing this was when things would get ugly. "Ms. Thompson, isn't it true that you enjoyed an expensive lifestyle far beyond what your combined salaries could support?" "I believed my husband was successful at his job." "But you never questioned the source of money for luxury vacations. Expensive jewelry, a $60,000 kitchen renovation." Katie's voice remained steady. "My husband told me these purchases came from bonuses and company profits. I trusted him." "You trusted him so completely that you never looked at bank statements, never asked to see tax returns, never questioned why he insisted on handling all financial matters." "My husband convinced me that I was bad with money, that financial planning was too complicated for me to understand." "So you chose willful ignorance over responsibility?" Katie's composure cracked slightly, and I saw a flash of the old fire in her eyes. "I chose to trust my husband. That's not the same thing as willful ignorance. But surely a reasonable person would have—" "Objection," the prosecutor interrupted. Argumentative. Sustained. The defense attorney tried several more angles, but Katie held firm. Yes, she'd enjoyed the lifestyle Michael provided. No, she hadn't questioned his explanations. But most importantly, she'd had no knowledge of the criminal activity funding their life. When Katie stepped down from the witness stand, I wanted to applaud. She'd been everything I knew she could be: honest, strong, and unashamed of having trusted someone she loved. But the real drama came when Michael's business partner, James Morrison, took the stand. "Mr. Morrison," the prosecutor began, "how long have you known the defendant?" 12 years. We started at Prestige Investments around the same time. Were you aware of Mr. Crawford's embezzlement activities? James shifted uncomfortably. I suspected something was wrong about 2 years ago. What made you suspicious? Michael's lifestyle didn't match his salary. He was driving expensive cars, taking luxury vacations, wearing watches that cost more than I make in 6 months. Did you report these suspicions? No. Why not? James looked directly at Michael for the first time. Because he offered to cut me in. A gasp went through the courtroom. This was news to everyone, including the prosecutor. "Mr. Morrison, are you saying you participated in the defendant's crimes?" "I'm saying he tried to recruit me. He showed me how the scheme worked, promised I could make an extra $50,000 a year with minimal risk." "And your response?" "I told him no, but I also didn't report him." "Why not?" "Because I was scared." Michael made it clear that if anyone investigated him, he had contingency plans. The prosecutor leaned forward. "What kind of contingency plans?" "He said he had documentation that would implicate other people in the company, people who had nothing to do with the thefts." "Did he mention any specific names?" James hesitated, then looked at Katie in the gallery. "He said his wife's name was on enough documents to send her to prison for 20 years. The courtroom erupted. Michael's attorney objected frantically, but the damage was done. Everyone now understood that Michael hadn't just stolen money, he deliberately framed his wife as insurance against getting caught. During a recess, Katie found me in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. "Did you hear that? He was planning to blame me from the beginning. It wasn't just about leaving me when he got caught. He was actively setting me up." I heard. How could I have been so blind? How could I have married someone so evil? "Katie, listen to me. Michael is a sociopath. He's probably fooled dozens of people over the years. The fact that you trusted him says something about your capacity for love, not your judgment. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. You don't have to decide that today. Right now, just focus on getting through this trial." But I could see the damage Michael had done went deeper than financial fraud. He'd stolen Katie's ability to trust herself, her confidence in her own judgment. That night, as we sat in my living room reviewing the day's testimony, Katie made an announcement that surprised me. "I've decided to write a book." "A book?" "About financial abuse in marriages. About how smart, capable women can be systematically manipulated and controlled." "That's a wonderful idea. I want other women to recognize the warning signs I missed. I want them to know they're not alone, and they're not stupid." Looking at my daughter, really looking at her, I realized that Michael's greatest crime wasn't stealing money. It was convincing a brilliant, talented, compassionate woman that she was weak and worthless. But he'd failed. Katie was still brilliant, still talented, still compassionate, and now she was angry enough to fight back. The predator had awakened the warrior, and I couldn't wait to see what she did next. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours before returning with their verdict: guilty on all counts. Michael Crawford was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution. As the bailiff led him away in handcuffs, Michael looked back at Katie one last time. But instead of the broken woman he'd tried to create, he saw someone who was staring back at him with cold, satisfied justice. "How does it feel?" I asked Katie as we left the courthouse. "Like I can breathe again for the first time in years." 6 months later, I stood in the back of a small art gallery in downtown Charleston, watching my daughter hold court at her first solo exhibition. The paintings were extraordinary, bold, vibrant canvases that captured both pain and liberation with stunning clarity. The centerpiece was a large painting titled "Breaking Free," a woman emerging from dark, tangled chains into brilliant sunlight. It had sold within minutes of the opening. "Mom, come meet someone," Katie called, approaching with a distinguished-looking man in his 50s. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb. He's been following my story and wants to discuss something with me." Dr. Webb shook my hand warmly. "Ms. Walsh, your daughter is remarkable. Her insights into financial abuse could help thousands of women. What kind of help? I asked. I run a nonprofit that provides legal and financial counseling to abuse victims. Katie has agreed to join our board and help develop educational programs. I looked at my daughter, radiant in a way I hadn't seen since her college days. That sounds perfect. It does, doesn't it? Katie smiled. I finally found my purpose. After the opening, Katie and I walked along the waterfront where we'd talked about freedom months earlier. I have something to tell you, Katie said. I got a call from a publisher today. They want me to write that book I mentioned. That's wonderful news. It's more than wonderful. It's validation that my experience matters, that my voice has value. We stopped at the same bench where Frank had proposed to me 40 years earlier. The water sparkled in the moonlight, and everything felt full of possibility. Katie, I need to ask you something. Do you forgive me for the way I handled everything? For investigating Michael? For not telling you about the affair immediately? Katie took my hand. Mom, you saved my life. If you hadn't done what you did, I'd probably be in prison right now, while Michael lived it up in some non-extradition country. I was so afraid you'd hate me for destroying your marriage. You didn't destroy my marriage. Michael did that the day he decided to betray everything we promised each other. And now I'm free. Free to be who I really am, not who someone else wants me to be. As we sat there in comfortable silence, I thought about the last year. I'd started it as a widow struggling with debt, watching my daughter disappear into someone else's idea of who she should be. I was ending it with my house paid off. The FBI had recovered my $240,000 from Michael's accounts. My daughter restored to her true self, and a criminal in prison where he belonged. But the real victory wasn't the money or even the justice. It was watching Katie paint again, laugh again, dream again. It was seeing her remember that she was strong enough to face anything life threw at her. You know what the best part is? Katie said suddenly. What? Michael thought he was so smart, so superior. He thought he could manipulate everyone around him forever. And instead, he was outsmarted by two women he considered weak and insignificant. I laughed. I wonder if he's figured that out yet. Oh, I'm sure he has. 12 years in prison gives a person a lot of time to think about their mistakes. As we walked back toward the car, Katie stopped suddenly. Mom, I just realized something. What? I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Good. You deserve happiness, sweetheart. So do you. When was the last time you went on a date? I laughed. Katie Thompson, are you trying to set up your 64-year-old mother? Maybe. There's this doctor at the hospital, a widower about your age. Very nice. Loves art. Has a great sense of humor. We'll see. That's not a no. That's not a no. As we drove home, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Sometimes protecting the people you love means making difficult choices. Sometimes it means letting them hate you temporarily so they can love themselves permanently. Michael Crawford had tried to steal more than money. He'd tried to steal my daughter's identity, her confidence, her future. But he'd underestimated the strength that runs in Thompson women. We bend, but we don't break. And when we fight back, we fight to win. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.